This is the Power 5 with Cal Lee, Warren Shaw.
Welcome, everyone. This is the Power 5, Cal Lee, Warren Shaw of the Baseline NBA podcast. We give you the top 5 teams that's running things in the NBA. It has been a tumultuous couple of weeks in the NBA. 2017, definitely without controversy, drama, and a ton of competition. And to discuss the teams that we think are deserving to be our Power 5, you know I got to do it with my right-hand man, 50 grand NBA aficionado, my man who also co-hosts the Baseline NBA podcast. www.shawsports.net is where you can find him if he's not blowing up your Twitters. My man, Warren Shaw, what's good, man?
I'm chilling, bro. I'm chilling as always, and it's great to get back into this Power 5 discussion. I think we have a couple changes that we're going to jump right into, man. But, you know, I want to give all the listeners little notes about what's going on. Not recording in our normal situation here, so if the sound quality is a little off, that's going to be on me. But also, we won't be doing the show on our regular time for Super Bowl Sunday is happening this week. So, you know, you may have to wait for your next episode after this one. But it's going to be a great show nonetheless, bro.
Yeah, listen, I'm sure there's going to be enough craziness happening in that time frame. Deem it necessary for us to just hold over from our people salivating over the next telecast, the next podcast that we're going to drop. So we appreciate everybody's patience. But at the same time, let it not be said that we will do all that is required to give you the goods discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. So be sure to check out the NBA, the Baseline NBA podcast. Clearly, our last episode, which we've been getting a lot of great feedback on, discussing the drama that's reigning in the Eastern Conference. And of course, the Who You Got topic, Shaw, which a lot of people have favored very much into between Nikola Jokic or our boy Kristaps, KRS-One. See why I want to call him KRS-One? Because this is so much easier than having to try to remember to call him Kristaps Porzingod.
The zinger.
The zinger, right? You know, and all these other wild and outrageous other nicknames that have been coming up with him, man. KRS-One, let's get it right. Great show that we just dropped. So we definitely encourage everybody to check out the Baseline NBA podcast. At NBA Baseline is the Twitter handle. At Shaw Sports NBA is my man Shaw's Twitter handle, and mine at GameFace Lee. Shaw, let's get right into a couple of items, topics before we get into the Power 5 that's already happening in the association as we're recording this podcast. First things to note, there have been rumors right now that Serge Ibaka, aka Serge Ibaka, for the Orlando Magic, just freshly removed from his tenure with the Oklahoma City Thunder via that big trade in the offseason where Victor Oladipo now becomes the sidekick to Russell Westbrook in OKC. Serge Ibaka is to help that new regime ushered in by Vogel for the head coach of the Orlando Magic. The word is that he may be possibly on the trading block.
And it's crazy to me. That's wild that this situation has turned sour so quickly. You're looking at a team that basically gave up, you know, some two promising young guys for Ibaka, who they were intending to keep past this season. And now he's got a 1-year deal, obviously, but they were very intent on trying to bring him back into the fold for the years to come. But some blundering moves by this Orlando Magic management, you know, getting Bismack Biyombo to come over there, getting Jeff Green, and parts that just don't fit for what that roster is. And now they have buyer's remorse and looking like the Charlotte Hornets when they got Lance Stevenson and they were done with him, you know, basically 3 months into their rental, if you will. So this is a very interesting situation. I think in Orlando, it kind of shows you how management and ownership has really kind of led this franchise astray, despite having some young talent on that roster.
Have we not seen this before already with the Orlando Magic? It amazes me, and I don't think I'm surprised by this whatsoever. Remember Channing Frye? I mean, seriously. I mean, some players are good for every other team, but the team that seems to be in desperate need to do something to make them relevant in these free agency conversations or in making some kind of splash or some kind of big move leading up to the NBA draft or during some point in the free agency period. And I don't think I'm completely surprised by this. I kept saying that by bringing in Serge Ibaka, you stymie the growth of Aaron Gordon. I think Aaron Gordon certainly showed not only Orlando Magic fans, but I think showed the NBA that this guy is not just about dunking the basketball. He, I think, would have been a very key contributor. And I really feel like you kind of put Vogel behind the eight ball a little bit, having him to figure out how to relegate minutes to a young, growing, budding star like Aaron Gordon at the expense of a veteran guy like Serge Ibaka, who I quite frankly think deserved better. Now, look, the circumstances played as they did, Shaw. Earlier in the previews when we discussed back in the beginning of the season, you talked about how this is actually, a good deal for the Oklahoma City Thunder in getting Victor Oladipo. And while definitely the upside is more on Oladipo and the potential for the Oklahoma City Thunder, I really think that if we kind of look back at this, I don't think either of these teams have really been reaping the benefits of this quote unquote big trade that happened prior to the move made by Kevin Durant going to the Golden State Warriors.
Yeah, I mean, right now it's a semi-wash. I still lean towards OKC getting the better end of it, especially with Orlando now putting Ibaka out available in the trade market. So really, what it boiled down to, and had some conversations on Twitter regarding this specific incident. It's like, all right, well, now no matter what happens, if they move Ibaka, it becomes Oladipo and Sabonis from Orlando was traded for whatever package they get now in return for Ibaka. Ibaka is no longer part of the equation, or will no longer be part of the equation if a deal does happen. So that to me, I think, is a little bit sad. I mean, I'd still rather have Oladipo and Sabonis. I think OKC is happy with that deal as well too. But yeah, like I said, you're right, it's a little bit of a wash. But to kind of touch on the teams that are now supposedly calling and are interested in Ibaka, he has no short list of suitors. My issue with Ibaka is, though, I don't think he's the number 2 or the number 3 option that he thinks he is. I think he really is a rotational guy who can hit some shots. I think someone was comparing him to a Horace Grant. On Twitter today as well too, saying he would fit that role nicely for like a Toronto Raptors team or a Portland Trailblazers or something like that. But yeah, he has no short list of suitors, but he's not the guy that he thinks he is.
Yeah, and that to me is going to probably be the key, is which team does he land with that is going to be able to use him in the manner that I think is necessary, not only for him to maintain his status as being a relevant, I don't even know if the word starter is a relevant contributor for that basketball team. I think we had the same questions about what was going to happen to a guy like Tobias Harris, Marcus Morris, all these guys going over to the Detroit Pistons. And clearly you've seen that Stan Van Gundy has figured out a way to use the personnel, and all of them are effective contributors, because you could clearly see that at times it seems like it's a cluster at the position that's being played. Clearly, whoever is going to get Serge Ibaka, there has to be a necessary need to fill in that void that he clearly can come in and contribute. I just hope that they are not overstepping or extending the thought process of what Ibaka pretty much is giving you right now, because I really think that he's a bougie version of Joakim Noah.
A bougie version?
A bougie.
He's bad and bougie like Migos?
Almost, maybe. I mean, in some way, shape, or form. I mean, he clearly can do more for you than what you're already getting from Joakim Noah, but is what you're getting from him exactly translating to the type of success that might lend to the idea that he is a disappointment for the money that he's getting paid? Now, to your point, again, that bougie part is him believing that he is just as good as what he used to be for the Oklahoma City Thunder. So we'll wait and see what happens. But interesting dilemma, Shaw, and we definitely got to monitor this thing as we move forward. The other point of context that we want to break up, and listen, not that we don't always talk about teams that are on the come up. This team is far from being in the come up of our conversations of the Power Five. But let it not be said that this is one of the reasons why I think Eric Spoelstra does not get enough credit as being a head coach for a basketball team that is just clearly just a disappointment more than anything. But you can't tell in their efforts over the last 8 games, and that's the Miami Heat. This is a basketball team that was about as god-awful as the Dallas Mavericks first start to the season. But funny enough, both the Mavericks and the Miami Heat have really been playing some great competitive basketball. And the results is the Miami Heat reeling off 8 straight games. They are somewhere within striking distance to that 8 seed. I don't see it being a realistic possibility in the Eastern Conference. But nonetheless, man, I'm more impressed at the fact that these guys are out there balling. And, hey, Deion Waiters is the second coming of Freddie Mitchell right now on the basketball court. So who am I to complain about what the Miami Heat are doing?
Waiters Island, Eastern Conference Player of the Week. I called it in the middle of the week after that second game winner against the Brooklyn Nets last week, and he just continued to play great basketball. 23.3 points, 5+ assists, 4.5 rebounds, giving that Eastern Conference Player of the Week honor, and obviously a 4-0 record for the Heat during that. And he's really just been kind of pressed into being the guy. Goran Dragic has played some nice basketball for them as well, but the Heat have just suffered a lot of injuries. Josh Richardson has been out. Tyler Johnson has been out as well, too. Wayne Ellington's been in and out of the lineup. Whiteside's been banged up in the last week or so, too. And it really has just kind of allowed Waiters to kind of insert and inject himself into what the Heat have been doing. And, he's not the only cause of this 8-game winning streak, but he's definitely been one of the catalysts for it. And, like you said in the outset, Spoelstra as a coach, he's just had to plug and play and figure it out on the go. And these rotations haven't been perfect. They haven't been sexy, but they're getting it done right now. And you have to wonder if this winning streak, is really good for the organization, because they were borderline being one of the worst teams in the NBA. I think they had the second worst record, so that would put them in a very nice position come lottery time. Still a lot of season left to go, obviously, but this 8-game winning streak has catapulted them, if you will, to even, like you said, the conversations of potentially making the 8th seed. And what good would that serve this franchise, getting rolled over by the Cleveland Cavaliers in the first round. So, it's good to know. And like I said, we definitely had to give them some props on our show here too. But I'm a little bit concerned about this winning streak in terms of them for the big picture.
It's crazy, Shaw. This team is among the worst offensively in the NBA. I mean, they're like second to last, or maybe even dead last, if you kind of look at, the points that they score per night. But their defense has vastly improved. And I think that has been the key to giving themselves a chance each and every single time. One of the more impressive wins was obviously the last second shot by Deion Waiters over the Golden State Warriors. And it's not really about the Warriors. I mean, we've seen this, at times with the Golden State Warriors. They have one of those, those sleeper games, those trap games, if you will. But I think it's more so the defensive effort that's being provided, especially through the more uncommon players who have been not known to play defense. Spoelstra has gotten these guys to play defense. And I think the one thing that he's basically saying is, look, if you guys are not going to score enough points, at least try and keep the other team from scoring that many more points from you. Give yourself a chance in the fourth quarter. And certainly if the Miami Heat are in striking distance in the fourth quarter, they may actually have a couple of guys out there who are not afraid to shoot the shot, something that I'm sure the New York Knicks, which they had on their arsenal
Oh, boy.
on a nightly basis, so interesting stuff. All right, Shaw, let's get right into it. This is the Power 5, so we got to get right down to the nitty gritty. Let's talk about the top 5 teams that we believe are running things in the association.
Number 5.
All right, at number 5, Shaw, we got a tie on this one, man. We have a tie on this one. It's like this is the first time already this season that we've come across. It used to be pretty clear cut in our previous rankings. But in the number 5 position, we have the Washington Wizards and the Houston Rockets, who slipped down a couple of notches. It's been a little rough patch for the Houston Rockets, y'all. It's amazing because you don't even have the Houston Rockets in the top 5 anymore. I have them, as a 4 ranking. So equally, we have them as the 5. Why do you have the Washington Wizards as now in the top 5 for the Power 5?
This team has made it a 100% turnaround from where they started the season.
And have also made me look good. Thank you.
Yes, they have. They really have. And Scott Brooks has gotten this team to a level where they're confident. They're confident in their late game ability, execution. Otto Porter at that small forward position, leading the league in 3-point shooting, which is just not a name that I would have picked in the top 10 when it comes to 3-point shooting this year. But he's our NBA league leader currently. And again, John Wall playing the best basketball of his life. Markieff Morris playing immense at the power forward position, putting up, double doubles here and there too, but playing great defense and playing great switching defense too. And I think that's what the biggest key to this team has been their ability to defend, not blowing the numbers off the charts, if you will, only 15th in defensive rating, but in the last month or so, they've been a top team when it comes to that. And then overall, like I said, just how they seem to be playing as a unit. Not so great on the bench still. It really is very starter heavy. But for me, this Washington Wizards team is scary because John Wall Bradley Beal, Otto Porter, Markieff Morris are playing the best basketball I think they have ever played, and especially collectively since they've been together.
Yeah, I'm really impressed with the Washington Wizards. I think if nothing else, I would have had them really just kind of a tick behind the number 5 ranking in our Power 5. But I can't argue with the assessment, Shaw. I think you're dead on. And to the point of the Houston Rockets, I think the Houston Rockets have really earned enough equity that while they've struggled over the last week or so with their gameplay, they still have amassed one of the highest totals in wins, and that just can't be ignored. 35 wins still, as we talk about it in recording this show of the Power 5. I just think that, while they have not completely impressed, they still are doing enough and winning enough basketball games to still be in the threshold of the conversation.
Number 4.
All right, the number 4 seed in our Power 5 ranking, Shaw. New entry, ring them up, the Boston Celtics. I can't believe the Gang Green is finally mentioned as a Power 5 team.
And they have a lot of holes. They have a lot of deficiency in this roster. And, I've been tweeting out, if you're following me, I am sick to death of even hearing their name mentioned, in trade talks. But anybody gets talked about. We didn't go into it with the Ibaka conversation, but Celtics are a rumored team to be interested. Vucevic rumors along with that as well, too. We already know about, Jimmy Butler and Paul George and Carmelo Anthony and everybody you could ever think of, the Celtics are going to be interested in. But they just keep chugging along. Had a lot of injuries. Avery Bradley still not back from his Achilles. Al Horford's been battling a groin and had an earlier injury to begin the season too. But Isaiah Thomas has been the one consistent, along with Jay Crowder, who I don't think still is not getting enough props for what he does on a night in night out basis. But the Celtics team, coached by Brad Stevens, is doing a great job. And it's, again, to me, I think they're worthy of the top. It's getting into in the Power 5 here as they finally caught the Toronto Raptors, and the Raptors have been really bad in the last 2 weeks. So that's why the Celtics have been able to kind of sneak up in here.
I think Jay Crowder should adopt the Carmelo Anthony philosophy when it comes to the fan base, cheering for anything that he does. I don't want it. I don't want it, and I don't need it. That's how you should be about it. And if you're the Boston Celtics, while I'm praising them for what they have shown us thus far, at least 30 wins so far, which they're clearly ahead of the pace of where they might wind up being by season's end, they still have some holes to fill in. And I don't know if this is more of a byproduct of what the teams in our Power 5 have not been doing over the last few weeks, more so than what the Boston Celtics are currently doing. I think the verdict is still out, but it is safe to say that, especially since they've surpassed the Toronto Raptors in being the number 1 team right now in the Atlantic Division, that they are definitely deserving to be one of the top teams in the Eastern Conference, despite our sentiment that the Cleveland Cavaliers still clearly is the best in class. The Boston Celtics have positioned themselves to give credence to Danny Ainge that if he feels that this basketball team needs an extra piece or pieces to put themselves in a position to run with the Cavaliers, they have no more excuses on whether or not they should be better than the other 6 teams that are basically behind them in the Eastern Conference.
Number 3.
All right, the number 3 seed, ironically enough, as we were just talking about them, the Cleveland Cavaliers, Shaw. And what more can be said about this? This still, we may feel in our heart of hearts, is a team that's going to be considered as a top 2 in our Power 5, but they have not been playing like it, especially since that overtime loss to the San Antonio Spurs.
Right, and we talked about them at length in our last show, just kind of what LeBron is asking for, what he thinks his team needs. They had a nice win over the weekend versus Oklahoma City Thunder. Then as we record the show, they go ahead and lose on the second night of a back-to-back, by the Dallas Mavericks. The Mavericks, for whatever reason, have not been the same pushovers they were to begin the year, but still, you can't be losing to the Mavericks. That just can't be life, especially without Darren Williams and Dirk being as old as he is. Come on, bro. That just can't happen. So I know the Cavs don't have Kevin Love right now, and they don't know when exactly he's going to be back. Dealing with a back issue, but this Cavaliers team is still one of the best in the league, but they are struggling right now, and it's a lack of defense that's really bitten them in the butt, and hopefully they can turn things around. I use that term loosely because we are still talking about the Cavaliers in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, and my concern is the personnel. I mean, it's not like LeBron James in his own, authoritarian way has kind of signified the fact that they still don't have enough firepower. And maybe this is kind of lending credence that he cannot do this on his own, and he can't do it for a third year in a row. And we've seen this we've seen this even with him in the Miami Heat. I think at times there's just been that sentiment that while he has sustained a high level of play and has raised the bar really high, when there are teams who have actually dealt with the Miami Heat, they have basically put themselves in a position to better themselves over the Miami Heat. So,
well, let me ask you this: do you think because I think he did this. Was this last year or 2 years ago? I can't remember now. Where he kind of was injured. He took some time off to kind of prove to the Cavaliers that they needed to do more in case he wasn't able to go or whatever the case may be, and then I remember it was many years ago, Kobe got mad with everybody saying he was shooting too much. So then Kobe decided he wasn't going to shoot or not shoot nearly as much for a 5-game stretch where he was passing up all kinds of things. I don't think LeBron's above that. I think LeBron is very not above, going into a little mini slump of his own, if you will, almost purposely to kind of force the Cleveland Cavaliers' hands. And then we said on our recent show, he's got a little bit of a baby syndrome, and the Cavaliers kind of have to just acquiesce to it. But I wouldn't be surprised if you see LeBron's game slip a little bit in terms of a way to try to push Cleveland management into doing something.
Hey, listen, it's not like my man doesn't know the game. He is the Triple H of the NBA. Time to play the game.
Number 2.
The number 2 team in our Power 5, Shaw. Listen, we talk about this team every single week, steady as they go. And just like everything else, some things come down, but the San Antonio Spurs will forever stay steady or move on up. And that's exactly what they are doing at the number 2 spot.
Yep, like I said, they just do what they do, continue plug and play who's out there. Dejounte Murray had a nice little run while Tony Parker was out, then he kind of faltered. Now Parker's back. Danny Green was doing his thing a little bit. They're still getting great contributions from Dwayne Dedmon and those guys off the bench. Even with LaMarcus Aldridge being out, Dave Lee has come in and has stayed ready. One of the scary things for me too, again, we didn't talk about it earlier on, but they're another team that's interested in Ibaka. And if they're able to get Ibaka without giving up Gasol and just having him kind of there as a third big, yikes. I would be very, very
definitely
afraid.
Change the dynamic in the Western Conference.
Yeah, that's very scary. So, low-key creeping the San Antonio Spurs just doing what they do. And if they're able to make a move of that magnitude without making significant changes to the roster, and they won't. I mean, that's just who they are. They're just so smart, and they'll find a way if they're really interested to get it done where they're not going to break up the significant pieces of that, especially for Ibaka. But if they add a guy like that, then I think everybody should really be put on notice.
And if that does happen, Shaw, don't be surprised if Steven Jackson might wind up being back on the San Antonio Spurs now that he has openly admitted that he did smoke weed before games. Okay.
Attaboy, smoke your herb.
It says Ganjali.
Number 1.
All right, Shaw. The number 1 team, and I guess there's no question that while all fall, still the Warriors will remain true to who they are. Golden State, number 1 in the Power 5 rankings. Dude, all I can say is 144. I'm dropping the mic.
Listen, there is no reason to embarrass the team the way that they did against LA Clippers on what is supposed to be the Saturday night showcase. This Warriors team, again, they've had 2 or 3 games this year where they've just looked, they are unbeatable. And they don't always look that way. They don't always look that good and that precise, but that game specifically, and obviously that game against the Cleveland Cavaliers on MLK, they're starting to really put things together and run away with this thing a little bit here. And I don't think it was ever really in doubt, but they just continued to do what they need to do. Curry was missed, I think, the next game after that, and they still went to Portland and got it done. So they have multiple ways to beat you. Can always have 2 All-Stars on the floor, and that's what made this Golden State Warriors team so very, very good out there in the Western Conference.
Stacked roster, the likes of what we never ever seen. Turn it down for what? I mean, I don't know if that was prophecy. I don't know if Lil Jon just had a moment, an epiphany of an awakening of some sorts. But I mean, that pretty much summed it up right then and there. So
yeah, but shout out to Lil Jon getting a little job, little gig.
Yeah,
I hadn't seen it in a minute.
I mean, he's so vintage too in the black and white. Don't you like that as well? Yeah, exactly. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, our Power 5. 5 spot, Wizards, Rockets tied up 4, Celtics, 3 Cavs, 2 Spurs, and the number 1 team running things in the NBA, according to the Baseline NBA podcast, the Golden State Warriors. Shaw, awesome show this week, and definitely some things that we're going to have to be looking at over the next couple of weeks, especially now that we're getting closer to NBA All-Star Weekend, the NBA trade deadline towards the end of February, and now with the name Ibaka being thrown out into the mix, definitely going to start looking at how these organizations are possibly looking to make some kind of moves. I mean, before we were probably thinking about guys like Jimmy Butler, Carmelo Anthony, but certainly if a guy like Serge Ibaka winds up in the right place, he could be somewhat of a, I don't want to use the word difference maker, but he could definitely set a different tone that might be helpful for whichever basketball team he might winds up getting moved to.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing, as I said earlier, not as a second option, not as a third option, but just coming in as a pick and pop guy who rebounds on block shots, tries to get 10, 12 points a game and maybe 8, 9 rebounds, exactly pretty much what he's doing now in Orlando, but without the real expectations of supposing to do more. And it's ironic that we're talking about him and 2 of our teams in the Power 5, and actually, no, it's actually 3, because the Wizards are another team that are rumored to have some interest in him as well. All those teams are contenders in their respective ways, and would be looking to add a guy like him and not asking to do too much. So he could be. I'll go out and say I think he really could be a difference maker for especially all of these teams that we're talking about.
Interestingly enough, too, I think what it could also do, Shaw, is we were talking about it in our previous show that a team like the New York Knicks, a team like the Los Angeles Clippers, Cleveland Cavaliers, whatever, there could be a facilitation of a third team involved. And a name like Serge Ibaka, the player himself, while not completely marquee from a salary perspective, could open up the doors. So you never know. There could be some takers in this situation. They could be kind of they could facilitate it being that third team. So it's interesting how this all can shake up and play out. The NBA has been very good about kind of seeding. I mean, before I think it was Major League Baseball because it's always been that by volume type of thing. But it's always more intriguing when you see NBA trades being done because you always keep looking at how many teams are involved and how many actual players are involved to make it all work. Once again, we'd like to thank you and yours for tuning in with us here, the Power 5, Cali and Warren Shaw. Be sure to check out the Baseline NBA podcast. Once again, at NBA Baseline for the Power 5, Cali, Warren Shaw. We appreciate you guys, and we'll catch up with you next time.